Hi, my name is Bonnie Brynteson, and this is going to be my presentation on CODIT, which is the compartmentalization of the decay in trees. Before we actually get into the walls of CODIT, we're going to first be discussing branch collars, examples of obvious and not so obvious branch collars, the cuts, flesh cuts, and collar cuts, which are examples of not so good cuts and bad cuts for what happens when we can't really see the collar cut that well. And then we're going to get into the actual walls of CODIT. So first, this is an obvious branch collar. You can see the shoulder of the tree very well right here, making this a very obvious where to cut. It's a very good example of natural target pruning, which is basically just the way that the tree would naturally prune itself if it was like struck in a storm or if the branches were to fall off naturally. So this would be a very good cut right here, and it'd be really hard to kind of mess this one up. This one's a not so obvious branch collar. You can't really see the shoulder that well, not to mention that the tree branch is kind of at a slant. So making the normal cut that you would do on the other branch collar would be more difficult since you can't really get around it that much. And this one would require if maybe even more minor cuts, but this would be a good example of assessing whether or not the tree needs to be cut in the first place, because this would create such a big wound that would leave it open for decay that it'd be good to actually look at the tree in general to see if this is needed. This is another obvious branch collar. This shoulder right here is extremely massive, so it'd be really easy to make that cut. You just make it right along right here, and it'd give plenty of room to actually recover from the wound, and it'd be a really easy cut to plan. And lastly, this is a not so obvious branch collar again. This branch is coming out between this two V-shaped branches, which is going to make it very hard. You can try to cut it right here, but the problem with that is that it leaves such a fleshy open wound. Not to mention, if you were to try to cut the actual shoulder between, you'd be creating a wound on this tree and this tree. So this would be a very hard cut to plan, making it not so obvious, and it would also be very hard under the natural target pruning, as you can't really see the swelling that much. So how the tree would naturally prune this tree is kind of hard to see. Now getting into the actual cuts on why the collar cut is so important. When we have a clear collar cut, it's easy to make collar cuts like this right here. For example, when you see the shoulder right here, as in this example right here, this is a very good example on how to cut it properly. Because if you were to cut exactly right here, it would look something like this, which would just be a really good collar cut, which is just basically cutting from the tree properly, leaving the collar intact, so it'd be able to recover from the cut, compared to, as I said right here, where if we were to cut too closely from the tree, this would become a flush cut, making it extremely hard and open to decay. You can see some decay right here. Actually, you can see that the fourth wall of the tree actually tried to come up and put protective tissue around the tree to try to protect it from decay, but it did not work because it was a flesh cut. And when you prune the cut so closely to the tree, it destroys all the tree's defenses, making it unable to protect against decay, which is what we don't want to do. This is a good example of a collar cut. You can see that the fourth wall already came up. It's kind of hard to see that's decay right there, but you can still see where the shoulder of where the tree was, and that the tree is already trying to recover from said wound. And it's already grown new tissue, as you can kind of see from this lump right here, sealing it away from any harms of infections or fungi. A flush cut is going to be this one right here, because you can see that the branches come down, and if you were to not clip this right here, it'll continue going down the bark, leaving a massive wound from right where the cut is to the actual tree, making it extremely hard for the tree to actually recover from this wound, since all of the healing tissues are going to be in the shoulder right here, so there'd be nothing protecting the rest of the tree from this massive wound, and it's just now at a risk of infection and other fungi being able to get it, because there's no way to defend from right here. This is an example of mass decay and what happens if the tree is unable to protect itself, if you were to make too many flesh cuts, or just make it so the tree would not be able to recover from your pruning. This is a really just drastic example of decay of an old tree, where every single wall from the tree has been destroyed except for this fourth wall right here. But you can see that it greatly suffered from decay, and there had been no way that this tree could live, because it was completely hollow. This is kind of like a moderate version of decay of what's kind of more realistic. You can see it right here. It's gonna looks like it's gonna be in the third wall going into the fourth right now, but because it's reaching that fourth right now, the fourth is the strongest wall out of all of them, so it's actually gonna be most protected, and the tree could probably easily recover from this decay right here. So let's switch over to look at what the actual walls of the CODIT is. So just give me 1 second. So I made this diagram in this software called Minecraft, which is just basically a building one, but you can see all the clear walls. So going through them all, this is going to be wall 1, which is the rolls to resist vertical spread of decay. They kind of aim to restrict the movement in the xylem, and the response is slow. But this one is most vulnerable because it's too slow for vascular diseases, so this one isn't that strong. Going to the second wall right here, this rolls to resist the inward spread of decay, and it's the liquefied cells of the late wood. Definitely stronger than the first one right here. They kind of get stronger as time goes on. But this is the third wall right here. It's rolls to resist the lateral spread of decay, and it appears in ray cells that divide the stem into pie-shaped segments. And I made the wall 4 and these 3 walls. These ones are going to be more similar because they're even looking within a tree. It's kind of harder to differentiate between walls 1 through 3. Besides the obvious, what is closest to the stem in the middle, but wall 4 is going to be the easiest to differentiate between them all, which is going to be this one right here, and that's rolls to resist the outward spread of decay. It's the strongest wall that will grow new tissue over the wood present at the time of injury. So if there was an example, if there was decay right here, they'd be able to grow all the way around, and this the fourth wall will actually extend out, kind of making a lump right here into the actual bark, protecting the actual tree. But yes, that is my CODIT presentation. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you.